All right, welcome to the Better Earth podcast. We're doing an internal podcast today with our VP of Personnel Development, Patrick Butler. Patrick, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Tampa, our future HQ.
Thanks, Ty. It's great to be here.
Yeah, how's everything going in your world here starting 2022? What's the biggest project that you got?
I mean, it's super exciting right now. There's so many projects in the works. I mean, many ongoing things from last year have carried over, which, I'm really excited about. A lot of these things are ongoing and really it's constant iteration. But, one of the things that I'm working on right now is we're building training and tools and resources for every single position in the company, which is a lot. So I'd say that's definitely the most exciting.
Cool. And I'd love to kind of circle back to all the different versions of Pat, because you've been in sales, you're a co-founder of Better Earth, you're a co-founder of the previous company that some of the people here work for. Take us through a little backstory of people that haven't met you before and are looking to come in either as sales reps or even on the employee side, because now we're almost at 200 employees and they're getting to see you either in their training or in their recruitment. Give them a little background on who Patrick Butler really is.
Sure, I'll do my best. So, I've been in the solar industry. I actually got a call from Zane back in 2015, early 2015, to invite me to check out a solar startup, and that was my first exposure to solar. I was doing sales and working for different startups at the time, so it seemed like a perfect fit. I had some, I was interested in the environment. I sort of understood how residential solar worked. And so, when he told me about it, I was like, yeah, let's do this, I'm definitely down to check this out. Even though I had done door-to-door before and swore it off, I'll never do that again. Once I heard about how it works for solar, the deal, I was like, all right, I could give that another shot. That sounds interesting. So that was my entry point into solar. From there, we worked at that company. We worked at Solar City for quite a while back in Massachusetts. It wasn't until 2016 that we moved to California to start a previous venture. And that company was cool. I learned a lot. That's where I transitioned out of my sales role full-time after doing door-to-door for a few years into a more operational position. And I really just tried to fill in the cracks wherever I could as we were growing and sort of just trying to figure it out. So that included building sales training. That included a lot of the sales ops stuff that we work with now, as far as just pushing deals through and troubleshooting projects and all sorts of stuff. So I learned a lot about the operations end of solar, residential solar. And then it wasn't until 2019 when we were like, hey, let's start Better Earth, that I felt ready to dive in and do everything that I possibly could to orchestrate the operational development, I guess you could say, of Better Earth, and sort of combine that with my sales knowledge and my sales experience to create a really good process. Of course, there was a lot of learning along the way there, but what ultimately ended up happening was, I occupied every position to some degree, worked with all of our teams. A few people realize it when you look from the outside at the solar industry, but every single project passes through somewhere between 12 to 15 departments, every single project. So there's so many handoffs, there's so many different teams, and there's so many different people that specialize in exactly their part of the assembly line of a solar project. And so learning all of those in and out was really interesting. And now it's really a matter of how do we grow these teams, how do we scale these teams, and how do we make that learning curve more efficient.
Yeah, and when you talk about 12 to 15 departments, it's kind of amazing to think about where we've grown from less than 12 to 15 people to 12 to 15 departments with leaders and middle leadership and a place where we've set the foundation to build and recruit with the goal of becoming the best and biggest solar company in the United States and hopefully maybe the world someday. What are you doing, right now with, where we're at, almost 200 employees. We've got all these growing departments. We're about to enter our third state as an installer in Florida here at the beginning of the year. Where do you think most of our focus has been on the ops side? Because you're on a little bit of a different side than I am. What's the most important stuff that we're doing every day kind of on the Better Earth operations and people and employee side that's going to allow us to double up and triple up this year?
Sure. It's always hard to answer this question because there's a million things that we're doing.
Sure.
But there are, there's initiatives on our people operations side to not only get more people in the door, but get better quality people. And as and also develop the people that we have. I mean, we could definitely talk a lot about that. On the sales side, we are bringing on a crazy amount of volume, and for all those people, they need to learn our system, our process. So there's a lot of opportunity to build content there as well, just to help accelerate that learning curve and get them integrated into our system and sort of the Better Earth way of doing things. So, I mean, I could kind of talk all day about different initiatives there. And then one thing that I'm always working with, I work with Philip on, is just keeping our resources up to date. So this is something that I think is sort of like maybe other companies don't have this department or this focus, but to me, I always notice that it's one of the lowest hanging fruit for just making sure people have the tools, links, forms, whatever at their fingertips always to do their job and not have to ask about it. It's a lot of wasted time goes into people asking the same questions over and over again. So building a resource for everybody, our Atlas and our Atlas tools for dealers, employees, internal sales, or managers to make their lives a lot easier.
Yeah, I know. I use the Atlas, particularly the dealer one, almost daily with what I'm doing on the dealer side. And I always kind of get those remarks like, wow, this is kind of an amazing tool. We haven't had access to something like this before. And I know internally we feel like we're 5% of the way there, 10% of the way there. So I would definitely agree that just making people comfortable with how to interact with us, if it's an employee or a sales partner or a potential recruit or whatever, just making that experience really easy to work with Better Earth in whatever capacity is, I think, really necessary, especially kind of in this remote world too, because your department is everywhere, not just in California, Arizona, or Florida. You're working with people in, I don't even know how many states and how many countries. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, how you're,
sure.
The opportunity really with us too, to kind of work from anywhere globally.
Yep.
And how that kind of workflow actually exists on a daily basis with all these different time zones. It's a little nuts.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm really interested in this because it's the cutting edge of work and work in general. And I'm sort of interested in these larger trends. Just, I'm sort of a history nerd. So just looking at the way, businesses have evolved over time, different entities, but the nature of work and what people do. And I'm particularly interested in it because as like a young person, I'm turning 28 soon. I have many peers my age, and I'm watching as a lot of them have struggled to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think what we're noticing, and if you ask really anybody probably under the age of 37, is that they're not able to live the life that their parents were able to live. It's just not the same. This isn't the kind of situation where you can have a, one single income and afford a house and 2 cars. Like, the world is different now. And what we're also noticing is, especially with the events of 2020 and all that happened there, is the nature of work, our day-to-day, like what tools are we using? How are we communicating? Where are we communicating? It's all completely different. So on one hand, you can get left in the dust in that scramble and that change. On the other hand, especially with us at Better Earth, we want to embrace those changes and adapt to them. And it honestly gives us the opportunity to define what the nature of that work is and to figure out the challenges with it so that we can become efficient fast. Because I think it was actually, very interesting timing that as we took on the endeavor of becoming an installation company right in early 2020 was when all this occurred, forcing us, with no option, no fallback, to embrace sort of what is a model of working that's going to allow us to be effective, function as a company, grow as a company. And I think a lot of larger companies might have had to, contemplate a little bit harder at that stage. They may have not felt the pressure the way that we did because they had more to fall back on, or they just are too set in their ways to be able to be very adaptive and change on a dime. So I think we're in a very great place for what happened to have happened and to give us the opportunity to change. And then to go back to your question, I don't even know how many countries we have people working in. For those of you who don't know, we sort of organized our operations on 2 divisions. There's our central operations and then our field operations. And it's actually a little bit counterintuitive because central operations, it's centrally located on the internet. But we actually have people distributed all over the world. So, in Serbia, in the Philippines, in other European, France, we have people in all over the United States. So East Coast, or the Northeast, Florida, Texas, I think Louisiana, California, Utah. We have people all over the country that all report in and work completely digitally. So, it's really one of these things where on one hand, it's very exciting, it's very new, and gives us the opportunity to learn. On the other hand, we have to sort of aggressively figure this stuff out and figure out, what does it take to grow a company in this new digital environment? Because there's really no models for us to follow.
Yeah, I love that you said define the work, because I always talk about that. It's like there's no one for us to copycat. It's we're building a solar company that we want to build. We're not copycatting a bigger one or one of our competitors. We're like, hey, we're going to do this our way, and we're going to build these other departments like people ops and like what we're doing with central ops, and we're going to do it the way Better Earth is going to do it. And what that does is present a lot of opportunity, but it's a lot of stress to figuring out the best path. And it's kind of amazing to think we've got 100 more employees than we did last year at this time. I don't really know when that happened or how it happened. But what I know the only way it was possible is with all the people and the leaders that we had in place that were wearing 3 or 4 or 5, or maybe at one point when you were wearing 10 hats, and we're able to hire within, we're able to build leaders within. It's the only way you can grow sustainably, I think, especially in the remote world. Talk a little bit about some of those opportunities that we have kind of internally and some of the ways we're helping define leadership and leadership in a sector that's brand new in solar. There's not a lot of people that have 10, 20, 30 years of experience. 3 years, 4 years can be very experienced. So talk about a little bit of what we're trying to do to define leadership here at Better Earth.
Sure. So, I think with the starting point of, let's figure this out. I think it's really key. It's the mindset of growth, and the mindset of adaptation is really essential. But then we look at our existing team, and what's really amazing to me, and I am not taking any of this credit because it's the credit of those individuals, and also, of course, our amazing COO, Misha, who I've learned so much from, is when we're building our central ops team, many of these people who have advanced into management positions, they all started very early with us, and they've been able to grow as individuals, take on new roles and responsibility, and also be able to keep their teams, of similar size. Most of the growth that we experienced in the last year was a lot on the field ops side, opening different warehouses and such. But most of our central operations stayed, many of the teams stayed roughly the same size as they were, in March, April, May 2020. And they've been able to produce 3, 4, 5x what they were doing before. So to put that in perspective for people, like usually when you look at a company's growth, you're looking at how many employees do you have, what's your employee growth versus your revenue growth. And when you look at some of our departments and their output compared to their size, it's mind-boggling what they've been able to do. Some of that comes down to software and tools and efficiency on the process and so forth, but a huge amount of that comes from just them growing as individuals, being able to manage their workflow, really have it under control, get better at what they do every single day so that they can handle more of the unique situations that always magically occur in solar. And, really, I think at the end of the day, keeping our mindset of adaptability and, growth and planning for the future, it runs deep in everyone in the company. You can really just see that in the numbers, and you can see that it's that development, that personal development that people have undergone that's really made the biggest difference.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I know we went over some of those numbers last week on kind of our recap team Zoom, and it was amazing to see the amount of more volume that we're doing with this same amount of people in particular departments. And obviously it's not just SOPs that gets that done. It's personnel, it's people, it's people really wanting to build something special. And I think that's really gotten us to this point kind of here in the start of 2022 is our people, our drive, our effort, our addiction to creating the best solar company we possibly can and creating the best experience for us to be able to recruit people and build teams. I know on a couple of my teams, I'm just starting to be able to get teammates on my teams. And it's like a unbelievable feeling that we've worked ourselves into this place that now we can grow and we can become, the top 5, top 3, top 1 company that I think our brand and our personnel really are going to be able to build. But it's taken a lot of work, and some of the ways that I love that what you guys are doing now on the employee side, and what we always do on the sales side, is kind of gamifying the experience, and not gamifying it for no reason, but gamifying it with if it's money, or if it's trips, or if it's just growth and leadership, but gamifying those KPIs that really defines what your position is and what your department does. It really allows you to kind of de-stress and say, hey, this is what's expected. This is how I can prove myself. This is how I can grow within the company. And I think that allows us to recruit better people, allows us to help build better leaders. Talk a little bit about some of the gamification strategies we're using on the install side, because I think that's fairly unique in this industry, at least from what I know. And I think it's been working really well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm super excited about this. So just for those out there listening, KPI is a key performance indicator. And really, when you look at especially our assembly line of people that are interacting with every single project, you can extract, sort of what is the output, and what are the different metrics that contribute to the speed that they do things, their efficiency or their volume. And so what we've been doing is, looking to gamify every single position, in the sense that we want to make it crystal clear what you need to do every single day to not only, perform for yourself and for your team, but also how that contributes to the company's growth overall. Because I think when you look at a company with, let's call it 15 departments for a round number, it can be easy to see or to lose track of how essential each step of the process is, and to see what their output, how that output contributes to the company's output, how it all comes together. And I think, I've loved the experience of just starting a business to witness the growth of individuals and how that it plays out to the company's growth, which we kind of talked about with the metrics, but also just how if you give people the right platform, you give them the right training, the right tools, materials, and the visibility into how they're doing, you can have tremendously different results. It's like one of the, on sales, for instance, in the sales world, the people that usually have the best metrics, the best numbers, are the ones that pay the most attention to it. So it's sort of a fundamental philosophy for us, especially, having that sales experience going into this, is to, create that visibility for all departments. And I think it's one of the advantages we have, that all of our co-founders have done some sales before, but it's also one of those things that, it actually makes for a more fulfilling and enjoyable experience as a part of the team to know exactly what you need to do. I think the old way of work is one where people are not measured frequently or often on their performance. And, they're stand by the water cooler a lot more than they're like producing output. I think we want to avoid the Dilbert style corporate environment where people just sort of do nothing, and that's how somehow the company manages to grow. I think the new digital world, the digital work landscape that we live in now, on top of, really allowing us to be lean, efficient, and distributed across the world, it helps us also hone in on metrics for each and every team and department, but also create a situation where people know what they need to do, they're happy doing it, and they know exactly what they need to do to succeed and make it to the next level and to overperform in their function. So it's like taking the opportunity to change the landscape of work and the environment that you work in, to also enhance the satisfaction of being a part of the team.
Yeah, and I've seen a camaraderie kind of be built from install side to sales side, and we've kind of come into this middle where I think now, everyone realizes how important everyone else is and is willing, especially given the visibility, as you said, it makes it easier to define, like, hey, what's the expectation? How can I, get a little faster? How can I help better get to that next level? Because it's going to mean so much from a leadership perspective or a growth or a whatever perspective, but it's all one thing, and it's getting it to install, having a happy customer. And the only reason anyone gets paid is when it goes to install and the glass goes on the roof, and we get the money and we distribute it out all to sales, and then that's how all the employees get paid. And, it's kind of a weird thing because all the jobs are so different. You got the sales side, commission only, kind of that thing that people say, like, eat what you kill. And in solar, you can make a lot of money, but it's a lot of work. You got a lot of sales reps doing all sorts of stuff to create happy clients. And sometimes they're doing too much. They're having to focus on all these things that maybe other companies don't see a responsibility for as the installer. And we're trying to make it easier on the sales side to have an amazing experience, both for themselves and their sales experience, but also the client experience needs to be absolutely unexpected and exceptional, so they can call in referrals. And then on the employee side, we're going to be able to provide that experience by hitting those KPIs, hitting those timelines, and having happy customers too. And it's like we're all on the same team, and in this digital world, it's hard without kind of a gamified element to keep everybody on track. Even with the best people and the most like forward-thinking people that are on board with the team will do anything. If you can't see it, it's hard to know if you're really doing it. And I love kind of where we're going with these different kind of sides to our company. And one of the things that I like most is one of our biggest differentiators. It's our 60-day install timeline guarantee. And that's one thing kind of on the ops side. We've got those 15 departments. They're all kind of chasing this ball to help us get to a 50 or a 45 or a 40 day install timeline guarantee, because we're doing all things quicker, more efficient. And we probably won't make that announcement until we're well ready. But how big of a deal is that going to be when Better Earth can market out, hey, we had a 60 install timeline guarantee for, a year, and now today it's dropping to 45. What's that going to mean for ops? What's that going to mean for our company?
I mean, I think it speaks loudly to what we believe in, which is like, and I think you touched on a lot there, which is we're always looking for opportunities to reduce friction. So you mentioned it on the sales side, making it easier for people to come in and start getting deals right away. For employee development, we want to make that frictionless. And also, for the customer experience, first and foremost, making sure that when they're going solar, that transition is as easy as possible. Our focus is always on service. And so with that, it comes really just like removing the obstacles that would make it challenging. So making it as frictionless as possible to make that it'd be really cool to, when we make that development, or if we're able to drop that guarantee down lower, like I just think it speaks volumes to, how we look at, really just how we look at developing our people and always improving the process.
Yeah, I would agree, because it's coming. We don't know exactly when it's coming, but from with all the numbers we went over last year and into 2022, I was kind of on Misha the other day, and I was like, hey, like when can we do this, and what can I do on my side to help kind of push that idea forward and make sure that with all the gamification, with all the KPIs, it's like 45 days is the number. When can we guarantee 45 days? So I just think that would be an exceptional just showcase of all teams, all companies, all personnel together to say, hey, we dropped this number by 10 days or 15 days or whatever. Like, what a win that's going to be. And I know we could probably actually do it now. It's just getting our ducks in a row as we grow and making sure we're able to guarantee that.
Sure, yeah, and I think, one of the challenges to growth is always maintaining quality. So if you think of this, you think once you've reached like a certain level of speed or quality that you're going to be able to keep it that way. But the challenge is always, if you're going to hit the gas harder, you're going to bring on more volume, you're going to have to be able to balance that out with keeping the team, the deliverables to the same high quality. And so I think, like what we're noticing, and I think what you can see a lot of companies that have experienced rapid growth go through, is the largest obstacle to handling that growth and keeping the quality high. Like if we're able to grow our volume and actually lower our timelines, that's absolutely unbelievable. But what it takes to get there is not just getting more people through the door, as we've discovered. It's about developing those people. And I think the challenge here is that some of our unbelievable staff, our employees that have been with us for a while, they've learned a lot about their position, they've learned about the company, they've learned about the industry, they've learned how to do their job better. But now it's taking it to the next level. It's like, who are these people who are stepping up to move from, so maybe you call it entry-level management positions to higher-level management positions, and to fill those ranks with super competent, high-quality individuals. That is the challenge. People always think it's a labor shortage on the front end. It's really about developing the people that you have to be super competent and to be able to handle the challenges of the future and be able to handle crazy off the chart growth and do it in an efficient way. So
how are some of the ways we're doing that currently at Better Earth? How are we helping them skill up in those various ways to become leaders?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the fun things about this is we're trying stuff because there is no set science to how to do this, but I think what we're seeing is, or at least some of the things that we're working on is the onboarding training, the onboarding experience, so building some standardization around that, using just simple things like assessments to help guide people's knowledge, because you can go through training, but if you're not paying attention, that doesn't really matter. Another area that I'm actually pretty excited to develop further is giving everyone the opportunity to sort of cross-train within the organization. So, we have our amazing atlas with all of this training material for each position, and giving people access to dive into other departments and other worlds and learn those skills on their own, just to enhance their knowledge of the industry or of Better Earth, and like understanding more so how, again, their contribution contributes to the whole. And I think what happens is just naturally is that you don't have all the context. You don't know how your piece of the puzzle fits into the greater picture. So, you're missing something there. But if we can paint that picture, make it really clear, and also give people the ability to learn different things, you're going to notice who's stepping up to take on this education, who's just genuinely curious about how the business works so that they can do better in their day-to-day job function. I think that itself is sort of like a leadership indication. But yeah, I mean, those are some of the things that we're trying. We want to elevate just the competence and the knowledge level of every single person in the company. One other thing I should mention is just, general leadership training. We are doing more and more with our managers now just to turn them into better managers. Some of that comes down to understanding like rules and regulations from the state that you have to know as a manager. Other parts of it is just understanding like how to give feedback to your team, or how to do constructive feedback, or to have kind of measurable results, so that if someone's kind of sliding in the wrong direction, you can bring them back on track. So a lot of these things, it's a combination of really discovering new methods that we might be able to pioneer with our personnel development. Others are sort of falling back on things that are tried and true with, all large organizations of people, and just trying to, just enhance their abilities and make them the best fit possible for their position within Better Earth, and hopefully allow that to continue to grow so they can take on more and more responsibility and become an even more important part of the team.
Yeah, and there's a ton of opportunities for people to build for themselves too here. Like we never say like no to someone's ideas, or they want to run a certain meeting, or they want to work and skill up within their department. I think that's what I love here is there's a lot of opportunity to come in and kind of try, like you said, try some things, or kind of put your spin or your personality into your role, into your department. It's not a lot of copy and pasting. We're doing the virtual offices. We're doing all sorts of what are we doing on February 2nd? We're doing like trivia nights. We're doing all sorts of interesting stuff to try to cross meet people in other departments, because in a remote world, you could be working in a peripheral department and really never meet the person you're working with. And I always find that really interesting, because all of our employees, all the people we work with, are so cool in real life. And sometimes just getting a little bit more like knowledge about who you're working with makes your work more efficient. It makes you gets you on the same page. It allows you to communicate more properly if you know the people that are in those positions. And I know one thing you're actually doing later today is you're doing like a little bit of a like public speaking training. Talk a little bit about that, because you host your own podcast too. You've done over 100 episodes. Talk about how kind of being in the podcasting realm in your personal life and in a leadership role here at Better Earth, how does that help you kind of define where you should spend your time as we build this thing? Because you're kind of involved everywhere.
Sure, yeah. I mean, personally, like all I can say is like I like to dive into things that I'm not super comfortable with and do my best to learn them. Doesn't mean I'm going to be perfect at absolutely everything, but like with podcasting, for instance, I was just a huge fan of many podcasts, learned so much from podcasts, and saw the value of if you host a podcast, you get to talk to really interesting people that maybe you wouldn't have access to otherwise. So, it's something that's like, hey, I don't know anything about this. It's not really my number one profession here, but I'd like to dive in, take a stab at it, and see what I can learn from it. So I think, it kind of goes hand in hand with how many of the people in our company have grown and developed. It's not so much that they had a huge interest in maybe what their specific department was, but they were willing to just give it a shot and see if they could do well with it. So, I got to say, it's just a matter of just diving in, taking a shot, seeing what you can do, and then just looking for ways to improve.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree. We're very similar in kind of how we've been involved everywhere. And it's you go on your own island, no one really hears from you for a week or 2 weeks, and you got something to kind of showcase that allows us to build. What are some of those things that maybe we're building that we haven't, maybe we don't have to debut them here on the podcast, but what are some of the things here in 2022 that we're building kind of behind the scenes at Better Earth that are going to allow us to go from, being a top 15 residential solar installer in the U.S. to breaking into that top 10?
Yeah, so I think I'll probably sound like a broken record at some point here, but it's developing our people within the organization to be able to handle more. So that comes in many different shapes and forms, but overall, like this year, we know that if we want to reach the sales targets, the installation targets that we have, it's just not going to be possible unless, every single person is moving, is growing along with us. So we're doing some cool in-person events to get people together. I think what you touched on earlier is pretty cool. We have to we almost have to over-socialize digitally because of how much is lost in the digital world versus the physical world. You know, as much as, it's double-edged sword having a bunch of people in an office. Maybe there's a lot lost efficiency-wise, but there could be a lot more gained in communication and sort of sharing values, and also just having maybe those personal relationships with your coworkers and staff helps make the position more fulfilling for you. So I think we want to find ways to sort of innovate that in the digital world and overcompensate for that in the digital world to help drive just overall happiness working at Better Earth. I think everyone realizes that we're on a really amazing mission. We have a really high, we have high standards for ourselves, and then it's an opportunity to be a part of something that could be their most fulfilling years of their entire work career, is bringing this from really, like a lot of people have witnessed it at zero and bringing it to be, a top 10, top 5 installer in the country. So I think it's driving home, that message that, what we're doing here is special, it's unique, we're at a unique time. And really just doing whatever possible to get people more engaged in their day-to-day performance, as well as just understanding how they're contributing to the whole company.
Yeah, I love that. I agree on all levels with what you just said there. To wrap this thing up, we're going to do some more in-person recruiting events. I think I'm going to one in Tucson here in a few months. What would you say to someone that is maybe looking at Better Earth as a possible destination to move companies from one to the other, or they're fresh out of college, fresh out of high school, and they're looking at Better Earth and maybe they don't have experience in renewable energy or solar, but they like what we're doing? What would you tell someone like that's kind of views us now on the outside as this big company? What would you tell them? Like how should they apply? What should they look at getting good at to make them a really great Better Earth candidate?
Sure. To start, I would say there's a few questions you should ask yourself if you're in a position to take on a new job, a new role, or enter a new career path. There's a few questions you should ask yourselves, which I think most people just never ask. And they usually just find themselves sort of blowing their way through life and taking this job and going to that job and leaving that company for some other one, whatever. But I think really if you want to have a fulfilling career, you need to start with a few basic questions. One is, what industry are you joining? And what's the nature of that industry? Is it growing or is it dying? I can tell you from my own personal experience in my earlier days, I did like a lot of retail work, just working at like the mall. And, I wasn't really qualified for much else, but I knew in that environment, you could look at the numbers year over year. We're going down. This retail environment was not something that was like picking up. There were not people getting promoted to manager in my company. It was just a slow death that was unraveling. So when you take a step back and say like, what industry am I joining? And so look at all the cool industries that are happening right now. Maybe you want to get into AI, crypto, biomedical science, whatever. There's so many types of engineering, things like that. Or there is solar. Residential solar is blowing up. It's on the rise. There's federal incentives for it. They don't appear to be going away anytime soon. This is just a huge. It's an industry that is in a growth phase. Maybe if you look at other industries in the energy space, like oil and gas and things like that are probably not going to experience the same exponential level of growth that we're seeing in residential solar. So ask yourself, what industry am I joining? Is it a growing or dying industry? Once you've established that, maybe you find an industry that you're somewhat interested in. The next step is really finding the right company. And when you look at companies, the next question I would ask is, where is the opportunity in the companies? Do you want to join a huge company, or do you want to join a really small company, or do you want to join one that's in the process of going from small to really large? And I think the reason you do that is because most people want to grow in their career. They don't want to do the same thing every day. This is, once again, not the world that our parents lived in. This is not the have one position, work at that company, retire with a pension and a Rolex, and that was it. I think for all millennials and below and even a little above, you have to be preparing for a life of multiple careers and having measurable results in your career to be able to be valuable for that next position, that next promotion, and to really be able to build yourself enough wealth to retire off of. I don't believe in relying on the government or relying on anybody else to prepare for your own retirement besides you. So choosing the right industry that's on the right trajectory as a whole, then choosing a company that's on their way to dominating in that industry, which, I'm just going to shamelessly say that Better Earth is exactly that entity.
Yeah.
We are, both, it's in the numbers, it's in the culture, and it's on the face of every single person that you talk to in the company. So I think it's just a matter of asking yourself those questions and then looking at where do you want to see yourself in, whatever, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. What kind of opportunities will you give yourself to grow? Because that's, sort of the final piece is once you found that company is what are you going to do within that company? Are you going to pick a low-level position and just stay there forever? Probably not. You probably want to earn more money, gain additional responsibility. That's the kind of stuff that gives people fulfillment in their career. And in order to do that, you need to be able to, it comes down to mindset. You want to be able to learn, you want to grow, you want to help that company become large so that they can dominate in that industry and really set the tone. And I think, one of the coolest things that we have the opportunity to do here, especially in the residential solar space, is to really set the standard. I think it's what we saw on the sales side and on the service side is that the standards were low and we want to raise that bar as a company. And that goes for every single position. If you are a site surveyor, if you are a permit coordinator, if you're an installer, there are standards out there in the industry and we want to, blow them all away. We want to set the bar and we're really defining what these career paths could be for people. We're really defining the potential opportunity for getting in one place, moving to another and growing in that spot. And really just taking your career as far as you want to take it. And if you're not, again, positioning yourself in a company that's going to grow and give yourself the opportunity to take on more responsibility, become a manager, or, get into, some level that's more fulfilling for you, you're going to miss out on that. So picking the industry, picking the company, what are you going to do in the company? What's going to be fulfilling for you in the long term and just working to get there. And I think it's the coolest time to ever be an entrepreneur. It's the coolest time to ever be in residential solar. There won't be a cooler time than this. And so for anyone from the outside that's looking at a potential career opportunity here, I'd say it's hard to miss, but there's a lot you can do to separate yourself from the crowd and really grow with us, be a part of the team. We'd love to have you. There is a massive shortage, and this is a global shortage, of super competent, amazing individuals. It's true. And not to be pessimistic, but you can never have enough of them. And especially if we want to get to where we need to be, we're going to attract all of those best people. So if you're one of them, come show it to us, and we'd love to have you.
Yeah, hit us up. We're available. We're growing, and we're about to be everywhere. So it's the time is now. Pat, that was incredible. I think we got a ton of great little clips, especially out of that last one. That was awesome. that inspired the hell out of me to get back to work after this podcast.
Yes.
But thanks for joining us. As always, we'll be doing a lot more of this here in the coming year. But that's it for this edition of the Better Earth podcast. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me, Ty.